Hi, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Ask a Death Doula. We are going to continue with our seminar series. Today, I do want to share with you that the Good Death Book Club is about to start. It starts on May 15th at 1 p.m. If you have not signed up yet, do it with the link below. We are going to meet in global community. You're going to have group questions, group discussions. We're also going to give you a workbook with exercises and with resources. And so you don't want to miss this opportunity. We're going to take one chapter from the book every single month live, and we're going to go through the whole entire book together. So sign up with the link below. Today on the podcast, we're continuing with the Good Death Seminar series. Now, I know that you're not supposed to pick favorites when you have children, and I think it's the same when you have chapters of a book and things you're talking about, but this subject today, what we're going to talk about, is one of my favorites. It's talking about the three common phenomena that happen at the end of life. And I have to tell you this, it has absolutely changed my life from the minute I stepped into the space of working with those at the end of life, being at the veil, what I've seen, what patients have told me, and the common phenomena that we see at the end of life changed my perception, changed the way I look at the world, and changed absolutely everything about my life in the best possible way. And it can for you as well. So I want you to sit back and relax. Today on the Good Death podcast, we are going to explore the three common phenomena that we see at the end of life. Here we go. All right. Good evening, everyone. Welcome. We still have so many people logging on. Welcome to the Good Death Seminar Series. It is number 9. I am thrilled. I am looking in the chat. Welcome to all of you. Shout out to all of you that are taking your time out to be here. This is one of my favorite. They're all really special in their own way, I think, just like our children. But tonight's event, this particular one is beautiful. I do want to shout out, and just if there's so many loving people here, you're from all around the world. I saw Spain, Mary Margaret, you're here from Spain. I saw Dominican Republic is here, Mexico is here, Canada is here, Australia is here, the US is here, people from all over. So it's just an amazing thing that we come together. And this is Thailand is here. Hello. Yeah. Celebrating you as well. From everywhere. And this is what unites us in this thing called life, is learning about end of life, because when we learn about end of life, we're learning about life. So I am going to start our presentation. I want to welcome you all. We'd be here for another hour and a half if I called out all of your names. I want you to know I've been watching and scrolling and watching everything that's happening. And so I am, again, honored and grateful that you're spending time. Denmark is in the house. People from all over the world. So what a great moment to be together and to just get present. So let's just take a deep breath if we could at the beginning of tonight. It's going to be a really special one. So I want us to really get grounded and be really present for this, because this is, in my opinion, this is information, and this has changed my life, what I've learned, what we're going to talk about tonight. And I think it has the ability to change yours as well. It has the ability to heal wounds and to inspire about life. And isn't that what we're here to do, right? Make the most and the best out of this journey. So, all right, I am going to go ahead and share my screen. And this is a live event. So we are going to do some interaction as far as some questions, some discussion, some questions when they come up after a certain segment. What I'm going to say is, let me get my screen all processed. All right, everyone can see Good Death Seminar Series on the screen. If there's any issues with that, let me know, but I would assume that we're good to go. Nicholas Infante, I know people keep logging on, so if you could just make sure you're checking and admitting them, that would be amazing. Let me just do the last round of them. I'll admit them all so we can let everyone in. So welcome, the Good Death Seminar Series, number 9. Can you believe this is number 9? I cannot believe we're at number 9. So for those of you who are new here, this is a series that we've done. We're doing 12, a total of 12, and we are on number 9. Now, by the way, they all stand alone. So you can come to one, you can come to all of them. You're going to walk away with that education and that value if you they stand alone. So if you come to the one. We've had people that have been coming to all of them, and I want to thank you for that as well. So, welcome to number 9, lucky number 9. And tonight we're going to talk about the 3 most common end of life phenomena. Now, death is the number one fear in our world at this present moment, the number one fear in the world. And we've removed it over the last 100 years, and we have turned aging death over into a medical experience when it's not. And we expect doctors to fix it, and they can't. It can be supported. It can go really well with the right education, but we've removed it. And in the removing of it, we don't have education and even practical application around preparing for end of life and what we need to know to care for someone we love. But we're also missing the experiences and the amazing things that happen with end of life patients. Not all of them will have this or all of them will share it. But what struck me immediately working in this space as a former hospice nurse and oncology nurse, and I'll talk about that in a minute, is that there were 3 common things that kept showing up at the end of life, even with people across the world that I worked with. And they were saying the same things about what they were experiencing. And I want to share this with you because if you knew the truth about end of life, if you knew, and again, I'm going to pick from a very large pool that I've been able and honored and privileged to work with, but if you knew that end of life could be like this, we would never be afraid. So it's my honor and privilege and blessing to be able to share with you. I just want to do a real quick recap so you know the titles of the previous seminars. Seminar number 1 was that we just forgot. We forgot that death is a natural part of the life's journey. Number 2, we talked about the hospice gap in mainstream and what's currently going on today, with potential of things being cut in the United States, that it is a Medicare benefit, hospice services, which is end of life services. But with even in that, there are major gaps in time, gaps in education, and end of life is not going as well as it possibly could. The Good Death Seminar number 3 was about advanced directives, choosing what you would want or not want for end-of-life care. Death Seminar Series number 4 was the healthcare proxy, who you're going to choose to speak your wishes you've already chosen for you. Seminar 5 was what does quality of life mean to you? Quality of life is your benchmark. So that is your benchmark on how you choose to either change into trying curative measures to something, and at a point when we can't reverse things, we go into, again, palliative and comfort measures. And there's so much beautiful, wonderful work that can be done in that space. It's a very, very important. Tight symptom management can change everything. We talked about in Seminar 6 how to ensure the best end-of-life experience for you. What does that mean? Seminar 7, how to have a family conversation about your end-of-life wishes. Yeah, uncomfortable? Yeah, for a lot of people. Vitally important? Absolutely. And by the way, we'll save them 1,000 times more suffering later on when they have a blueprint to go by of how to support you. Number 8 was dementia, how to avoid caregiver burnout and what to do when families don't agree on care for an end-of-life loved one. And now we're in number 9. So we are getting into some of the space, looking beyond the veil, some of the space that happens in that sacred moments of end of life as the physical body's diminishing and the spiritual body's growing. And again, just from a practical standpoint, I'll share this from knowing what to expect, what things mean. If your loved one is saying that they're seeing certain things or saying certain things, it means they're actually going to be physically leaving us soon. But I hope that you're open to a bigger picture around that, a bigger meaning around that, because it's the truth and it's the happening all over the world. And when we don't talk about this natural transition, we are missing out on, in my opinion, the greatest teacher about how to live. So a quote, death opens us up to the true reality of our inner being and selfhood. And this is from the amazing Viktor Frankl. And if you don't know Viktor Frankl, I would like to give you a little bit of a loving homework assignment to look him up after. He's an amazing just an amazing individual that has lots to share and has done a great deal for teaching us. So we quote Victor, and we're going to go on now to talk about the sacredness of death. And for centuries, so instead of the last just 120 years, for centuries, death was seen as a sacred rite of passage, a ceremonial event marking the transition from one state of being to another. Many ancient cultures viewed it as a moment of reverence and spiritual awakening. We've been dying for thousands of years. We know how to do this. We just forgot and we lost our way, and it's time to bring that back. In modern times now, we've grown distant from this sacred connection to death, and by reclaiming this understanding, we can help both ourselves and our loved ones face end of life with love, with acceptance, and wisdom. And it's very interesting as I prepare for you and your webinars that we do. It's very interesting because it keeps coming up to me now lately that I don't even want to say the word death or dying or dead because it's not resonating at all. It's like it's a transition. And my doggy is coughing there. And so more and more I am aligning with that. Maybe again, even the terminology, yes, the body dies, but there's a clear distinction between transitioning out of our inner being, just like Viktor Frankl had shared, and the body that we've been gifted to have this journey with, having its end come about. Much different. So I think it's important that we do get on the same page about how we are describing things and using it, because whether it's conscious or unconscious, it has an impact on our connection to that meaning. So let's talk about the power of heart-centered presence. And for those of you who know that I teach doula givers, death doulas, they're full spectrum practitioners at end of life. And we talk all the time about bringing it back to the simplest form, that if you can show up to hold space for that patient and family in this time, usually of crisis, without judgment, without agenda, to be of the highest service, anyone can do this. That's the power. And I want to tell you that that's the power of the heart. And it's also the secret for us and our humanity getting back on track, meeting each other without judgment, holding space, acknowledging that everyone's on their journey. So when we work in this space, it became very clear that we actually are human beings. There's two different parts to you. You have a human part with a brain, and that is your ego and your personality and the things that you've learned while you're in this existence. And then you have your being part, your essence, your connectedness to everyone and everything. That becomes a lot more prominent as people start to get closer to shedding this human body. And we're going to talk about some of those experiences tonight. But the power of heart-centered presence, when we focus on death as more than a biological process, it reveals profound distinctions between ego and heart. And when I really recognized this right away, is that as I was sitting bedside with people, as their physical body was diminishing, getting closer to the end of life, their spiritual body was growing. And they had new information, and they had serenity, and they had excitement, and they had peace and clarity about the life's journey. It was like a new lens that they were looking through. So it makes sense, and it's validated by science of physics, that your being part is your true essence, and that just becomes more prominent as we're shedding the human part. So you've got an ego part and a heart guidance, and the key really is always trying to connect with your heart guidance and make that the one that is the North Star that you follow. Ego-based guidance is decisions driven by fear, by control. We see that in the world. So not only do you individually have a heart guidance and an ego guidance, but there's a collective energy of either a collective ego of fear, which I think we all can pretty much say is the dominant energy that's running around this planet at this moment. And it makes sense because your ego is going to only have one winner and one loser. It's going to believe that everything that it has been taught is the way. And so when it fights to the death, and it does, by the way, for whatever your belief is in the ego, it's so limited. And that's why we have so many different places and different groups and different belief systems that are fighting to the death because they believe they're right in their ego mind. But if you can go down and you can expand further into the heart mind, it's a much different experience. Heart guidance is choices grounded in love, in connection and compassion, and the recognition of life's sacredness, that this is a gift. All life, human beings, animals, plants, elements, all of it, we're all connected. And that's one of the things that end-of-life patients say. If I may share a little bit about myself, so you know why I'm so passionate about this work. This is my life's purpose, by the way. Although, you know, I wouldn't be surprised at anything because I've learned to take my hands off the wheel and not direct this, whatever comes through. But this is my platform, has been for 20 years. And so I'll share that. My name is Suzanne O'Brien, and I am a registered nurse by trade. I'm a former hospice, which is end-of-life nurse, and oncology, which is cancer nurse. I have over 20 years of experience. I've worked at the bedside of over 1,000 end-of-life patients from all over the world, from different cultures and religions. And I've trained over 369,000 family caregivers to care for the dying and professionals. It's amazing. Why? Why did it take off in such a unbelievable rapid pace? Because end of life touches all of us. It happens all over the world. And for the last 100 years, we've removed the skill, the knowledge, all that goes along with this education. And so having so much experience just led me on a path uh, to reach out as much as I can to whoever I can to give as much education about end of life, because we're all going to need it. So it's a beautiful thing. And my why. So why? Today's been a long day. I'm just going to tell you that when I say that. So why do I work so hard and doing a lot of free education? I love free education, by the way. It's not, when we put a price on things, it devalues it somewhat. But when we also know that end of life and a positive end of life is a human right, it should not be a privilege. So it shouldn't be for only somebody who can afford to take a class. It shouldn't be for somebody who can only afford, to bring someone in and hire them. This affects all of us anywhere. And so if I have information that can help people, we're going to do that and we're going to give that out. So my why is that it's my life's calling. And a calling because it chooses you. You don't choose it. So there's a higher guidance and through line that's pulling you towards something. Now, here's the key, and I'm going to give you a couple of pearls tonight, is that your heart guidance and what it's being asked you to do, your gift that you came in this world to share, will not make analytical sense. So when you're being called to move to a different place and you say, well, that doesn't make any sense. We just moved here. But why do I feel so peaceful when I think about that? Why does it, my knowing, feel that way? So I'm just giving you an example. But the same way about work. So what's your gift? That's one of the things. This is a space that I have so much knowledge in. And right now the world doesn't really know sometimes the first thing about it. And if I help one family have a better end of life because they can't go back and do that again, it's a win. It's a win. But we've helped many, many more, and hopefully we'll continue to do so. In the seminar tonight, you will learn the 3 most common end-of-life phenomena across different religions, cultures, and even among atheists. Atheists are people who don't believe in any God or anything else. 3 key phenomena occur at the end of life. Understanding these can prepare us for the sacred transition and provide comfort to those nearing death and their loved ones. Now, again, this may not happen to everyone, and they may not speak about it, and it may not happen while they're in a conscious state to articulate. It really depends. It's all over. But because I've been with over 1,000 people, repeated themes, things that I saw over and over, things that they've said, and then sharing that on doing a 1-minute video or whatever education piece, and people sharing, my mom said that. That's what my dad said. And again, people from all over the world. So if we're not paying attention to this, we're really missing out on the key to all of it. So part one, the first phenomena is called the surge of energy. What it is, it's commonly referred to as end of life rally, known as the rally. And this phenomena occurs when individuals nearing death suddenly exhibit a burst of physical energy or mental clarity. Now, not to frighten you, but I knew I was called to go to hospice. I was a registered nurse, and I felt I was miserable in mainstream nursing because you just couldn't be with patients, and it was just not what I had thought it was going to be at all. And I heard this inner guidance voice that said, go to hospice, go to hospice. And I was like, why am I hearing that? I have no end of life experience, zero, none. But I felt in such alignment with that vision and so at peace with that I said, you know what, I'm just going to follow this. I don't know what it is, but I'm going to follow this because I've never felt, and I haven't hit it. I haven't found, I know there's more to life, but I haven't found it. So let me try this. I don't know what it is, but let me just see. And the first day that I went out to see hospice patients, I knew I was in the exact place I was supposed to be in my life. Now, the scary part is that I got a list of patients and they sent me out and they said, if you have any questions, just call us. I had no end of life experience. So I had patients on that list with end stage lung cancer, end stage breast cancer, with ALS. I was petrified. But I knew, and I took a breath, and I knew that I was supposed to be here much higher. Not that my mind could rationalize, but I knew that I was supposed to be in this space. And I also knew this wasn't an emergency. That end of life like this, not a traumatic death, an end of life expected is not an emergency. And that if I had questions, I'd call, and that I needed to really face that fear because I knew that my faith of being there was more important. And I'm glad that I did. So the surge of energy, I found this out on the job. And so you can only imagine when you have somebody close to end of life, like really close to end of life, all of a sudden waking up, bit of a shock. So I'm going to tell you that story in a minute, but I want to share again the surge of energy, also known as the rally. When somebody's at the end of life, very close, all of a sudden they wake up and they're clear, more clear than they've been in 20 to 30 years. So what happens? They may wake up after a long period of weakness or even unconsciousness. Some regain the ability to engage in meaningful conversation or even laugh and interact as they once did. Yes, all of that. It's like a 20, 30-year turn back the clock, and better than ever. It can last from several hours to a couple of days. For me, I want to say it's been 24 hours or less. And why is this important? It's a gift. It is an absolute gift. So when this happens, and again, I don't preemptively tell families about this because if I do, they're going to be waiting for it. And when they don't get it, they're going to be upset, right? And so what you want to know is that this is a gift. And if there's anything left to be said, so it says, again, anyone left to come, anyone left to say something, or just enjoying this very special last period of time, saying goodbyes, expressing love again, sharing any meaningful experiences. You do want to let your loved ones know that this is not a spontaneous recovery because it sure does look like one. And so you do have to ground them in that reality, but you also have to say it's a gift, utilize it, but doesn't it let us say what else, what bigger picture is going on here that somebody who is very close to the end of life all of a sudden woke up and is having these conversations. Really mind blowing. If you've ever seen it and have experienced it, it will change your life. So I'll tell you about my patient. Now, again, hospice nurse, and I'm glad it took me 3 times to be interviewed to get the job. Again, no experience. So that was, a positive thing is they knew I got this. They knew I had comfort in there. And that's another thing. Having no end of life experience. And when I'm at the bedside of end of life patients and in that, it's like I've done it for thousands and thousands of years. There is such a comfort level, a grounded comfort level. So those of you who are being called to this space know that you may not have a lot of experience in this life. There's a reason for it, and just honor that. So, Patricia, Patricia was 83 years old and lived alone, and she fell in her bathroom and was not found for days. By the time they found her, she was very close to the end of life, and she had this huge wound all down her leg. It was awful. And so they got her right on hospice. I came in as her nurse, and she was barely arousable. She just couldn't even lift her head up. She couldn't, her eyes were rolling in the back of her head. It was awful. And the family was just beside themselves. They couldn't believe she fell. They couldn't believe they didn't find her for 3 days. And so the very next day I made a visit, and I remember what they put her hospital bed in the sunroom. And I remember walking through, I could see the adult grandson, who was about 25 years old, sitting on a couch next to the doorway on the right-hand side with his head down, because everyone was in shock. And I remember walking through the sunroom doors, turning to him to see how he was. And I heard, hello. And I turned around, and she's sitting up looking right at me. And she says, who are you? And I said, I'm the nurse. And I said, and I'm here to see how you're doing. And I turned around to him, and he goes, I know. He goes, she's been like that since last night. I said, what happened? He goes, she woke up and she asked for pizza and Bailey's Irish cream. And I go, what did you do? He goes, we gave it to her. And I said, good. And then I contacted a hospice nurse who'd been a hospice nurse for over 3 decades. And I said, hey, I have this situation with this patient, and she was nearing end of life. And now she is like as clear as anything and asking for, pizza. And they go, oh, that's the surge of energy. And I was like, what's the surge of energy? So it's a good thing I have a poker face, or at least I think I do. I'm pretty sure I do. But it was shocking. It was shocking. And so this is a phenomenon that can happen. And again, when it does, it lets us think, number one, the gift that's before us that we have to embrace, because that is, but then from a bigger, let's go into the being part of who we are, and that bigger part of our consciousness. What's happening here, and how is that happening? Is there a much bigger picture attached to this whole journey of life that we may not know? And so important to know for so many reasons. And so that is Patricia's story. And I am so glad that they gave her the Bailey's Irish cream pizza. That doesn't sound like a good combination, but she was very happy. And they got what they really were desperately needing, that family, because this had happened so suddenly. They were able to have some of those final conversations with her, which was an absolute gift. Part number two, the second phenomenon, is control over when someone dies. And again, this is not for everyone. This is if you've had an end of life and surrounding you with so much love about that. I pick from a very large pool, but you might be amazed here tonight how many of you have actually had this experience with someone you love, maybe not been able to pinpoint it. Individuals nearing the end of life may demonstrate an unexpected ability to time their passing based on personal things that are going on, relational significance, and I'm going to tell you the three of what I think is happening. And so this is, again, for people that are in a deep sleep coma. So I have to paint the scenario for you, because if people are usually at the end of life, when they go into their transition phase, so how it typically starts is that somebody will lose the ability to swallow and stop eating. They naturally start to go into a transition phase. The body will go into a deep sleep coma. It's usually a few days, hours to days, usually a few days, that body will then have its end of life. So I'm talking about when they're in their deep sleep coma now. And not talking, not seeing anything, that they can seemingly time the time that they have their last breath. So let's talk about the three main reasons why someone will not die. Again, my experience, other people have confirmed this, but this has happened over and over and over again within my bedside experiences. Number one, they're holding on until a loved one arrives. They're waiting for someone to come. I remember being in the oncology unit, and this is a sad story. There was a young man, he was 31 years old. and he was dying. And it was Easter Sunday, and he was in a sleeping coma. And his 6-year-old daughter and wife got off the train and had just gotten to the hospital, literally walked through the doorway of his hospital room, and he died. So that was a whole bunch of energy, as you can only imagine. But people will wait and hang on for someone to come. They're waiting. The second part is they're waiting for something to be resolved, or a date, or a event like a birth of a baby or a graduation, or something. So they're waiting for something. And the other thing I'll add in there is they're waiting for you as family members to be more grounded within the scenario. We know how difficult end of life is, right? We know today, and it's always going to be hard to say goodbye to someone we love. They know that when they actually have their end of life, it's going to be that much harder. So if you're already in a very disconnected, unstable, emotional state, they're waiting. It's amazing. They're waiting for you to get more grounded. They'll hang on for you to work things out, to have a little more acceptance, to maybe work with a social worker, which is, again, such a beautiful, loving thing. And the third, and this is going to sound counterintuitive, they're waiting for you to leave the room. They're waiting for you to leave the bedside. They don't want that to be the last thing you remember. What is this saying about a bigger picture of their energy? Let's just go with it. With their being energy, if they are aware that you are in the room or not in the room, how the state of how you're doing, the 5 minutes that I've had family members leave the room, the 5 minutes to go get a cup of coffee, to go take a shower. One man posted recently, he went to get his wife a cup of water and she died. He was getting just water. He said it was that quick. He said, Suzanne, this happens. So the 3 main reasons are they're waiting for someone to come. They're waiting for an event, a date, permission. Permission is very important. We're going to dive a little bit more into that. They're waiting for you to be okay. And that really goes with that second one. And I really do instruct families to let your mom know. And again, I'll work with you first. It won't be that we want you to say something that you're not really able to say, but your mom is worried about you. She is hanging on because she's worried about you. Give her permission and let her know you're going to be okay. It's okay to go. So those are the 3 main reasons. And again, this has such a bigger meaning attached to it, and it's unbelievably beautiful. So the common patterns and how to support them. This is what I typically will do when I'm working with somebody at the end of life. If they are not having their end of life within that 3-day period, we start really looking for what are they waiting for? Are they waiting for someone to come? No, everyone's been here. I mean, that might be the case. Are they waiting for something to get? And I chicken with the family. And I've had family members. Look, this is a very hard thing for people. I have had one particular family member tell her mom, "Don't die, don't die," and her mom's hearing that. How can she leave at that moment? So, really trying to work with people to say, what are they waiting for? Have you given them permission to go? And then making sure they realize that the hearing is the last of the senses to go. I'm gonna trump that, and I'm not getting political. I'm gonna say that I think that they can hear and see you, because there's nothing else that explains awareness that they have, that you've stepped out of the room and what's going on. And so recognizing, again, this is very important, that people haven't had the opportunity to have a heart to heart or to say something to their loved one, encourage them to do so. And, to let them know it's going to be okay, that you're going to be okay, that they can go be with dad or whatever is speaking to your heart, to say. Very important. So let's talk about some of these bedside experiences with this particular section that we're in. Aunt Flossie. Sweet Aunt Flossie, 99-year-old woman, came on hospice services, and I came to see her, and she was, a small woman, smiling, just the sweetest thing that you could imagine. And that night she went into a deep sleep coma. She had one daughter that was taking care of her that was 73 years old, one daughter, 73. and she doesn't have her end of life. And we're going on day number 3. And I'm starting to say, okay, is she uncomfortable? Like, is she seem uncomfortable and agitated in any way? Nope, not at all. Okay. Is she waiting for someone to come? No, we thought she was going to have her end of life last year. We had this big family reunion. Everyone was there. Okay. Scratch that one off. What could she be waiting for? What is she waiting for? And the daughter was sleeping in a different room. She had a baby monitor, so she was giving her some privacy. And day after day, Aunt Flossie was still with us, which, by the way, science says is impossible. Day number 6 comes. Day number 7 comes. No food, no water, in a deep sleep coma. Science says it's not possible. I was there. So here I am at the hospice office. And at the office, you have the patient's face sheet. You have a piece of paper with all of their information. And at the top right, it had her birthday. And I looked at that, and in 4 days, she was going to turn 100. And I said, oh, she's waiting to turn 100, then she's going to die. And again, it was such a knowing that came in that there is a protocol on hospice that if you feel you have a patient that's going to die that night, you want to give the heads up to the on-call nurse. And so I remember being at the office, and the nurse was giving report with another nurse in their swivel chairs facing each other. And I walked over and I go, I have a patient who's going to turn 100 tonight, is waiting to turn 100 tonight, and then she's going to die. And they both flipped around their chairs and they go, did she tell you that? And I was like, so caught off guard because I felt it in every cell of my being that I didn't even question it. But she didn't tell me that, like, verbally. So I was a little embarrassed for a minute. And guess what? There she was. She died at about 4 a.m., but she waited, and good for her. Now, what was the big challenge there is really trying to help her daughter, who was 73, doing this alone, which you should never be. Try and have her not go down the tube. She wasn't sleeping. She's not eating. So that was a difficult part, but good for her that she waited for that. And again, they're waiting for a date or something of that nature. So let's have a group discussion. I'm going to open up this chat with what we have shared. Has this ever happened to you? And if it has somebody, waited for, is hanging on, waiting? Are you, for any one of those 3 things, waiting for someone to come, waiting for permission or a date, or waiting for you to step away from the bed? So let's open up that chat and have a little bit of a group discussion and see if there are people in this webinar tonight that have had that. Yes, definitely. Yes, all of it. Okay, gosh. Yes, I love that whole, okay, you guys are going super fast and I love it. Okay, amazing, you guys. This is amazing. So you all should be able to read each other's chats, except for a lot of you are sending me direct messages. So I want you to know that we can open that up for everyone. And so I do want us to have the ability to have that. So just make sure that when you're sending it, it's sent to everyone if you can, so everyone can see how common this is. Yes, yes. Beautiful. I'll read you some of them. Doris says, my brother passed after my sister and I left the room. Yeah, Doris, I hope that you knew this, or I hope that tonight this is bringing you comfort of how it was a gift to you and how there's a bigger meaning here. Diane says, yes. Louise says, yes, with 4 different people in the past 18 months. Oh my goodness. Thank you. Melissa says, yes, me with my dad. Karen says, yep. Gloria says, yes. Jean says, I have had someone do all of these. Oh my goodness. Kelly says, my FIL. Okay, father-in-law. Yeah, got it. Kathleen says, yes, my father and aunt. Yvonne says, as persons waited to be forgiven. Okay, that's a big one. That's a big one. Thank you for saying that, Yvonne. Waiting to be forgiven. Those last, powerful. Love it. Christy says, yes. Cindy says, my son-in-law's father, whole family left to smoke and he passed. Yeah. And I hope, again, here's the thing that I want to share with you that most people don't know about this. So they usually have the opposite of what this is meant for them. They usually are riddled with guilt, can't believe they missed it. holding on to this for years and years and decades. And again, if we flipped it and knew the truth about it, how not only was it a gift to them, but what a bigger picture that your loved one knew this. And how do they know this? Because they're existing in a different state of awareness. You guys have so many great comments that are coming in. So many of you have had this, that again, I think I want to pull this thread and put it into a document, because if we all knew this and were able to talk together. Yes, Diane, I see that. Yes, my dad. Thank you for that. Thank you for that share. And thank you for being here. Yes, my grandmother. Yes, mom did this. Yes, my mom. Yes. Is this the more common? And have we again removed something that could help not only heal our hearts, but inspire us about a much bigger picture? So that is incredibly beautiful. Now, okay, so we have two more questions. So let me just do a quick one. And you guys are coming in. There's like 100 more comments about this. I do think I'm going to try and pull this thread without your names and just share all of this amazing love that's been here. My grandma waited for my mother to go to the shower so she could leave. When mother came back to grandma, she was already dead. Yeah. All of it, both parents. Amy says, I left the hospital bedside of my husband to go home and shower and eat. I didn't rush back, but when I did, he passed away 4 hours later. It's like he waited for me. Yeah, it happens on all different ways. What I have found is that, and this is why I feel like this is so important, what I have found is that when people step away from the bedside, they don't know about this because most don't at this point. They are filled with traumatic grief and guilt that they weren't there. So it's really important. Thank you guys for all of those shares. That was really, really beautiful and so inspiring. Part number 3, visited by loved ones who have already died. Now, not going to, I don't like the expression woo woo, but let's just use it to because people will say that. Well, we don't want to go woo woo. Okay, I'm not going woo woo on you. Not at this moment. I want you, I'll be very clear on my belief system and what I know to be happening from my perspective. But I just want to even say from a practical standpoint, when people who are at the end of life talk about being visited by loved ones that are in the room with them that have already died, even angelic figures, know that from a practical standpoint, that is a signal that they will be leaving us shortly. Now, that's the practical side of it. If we want to go bigger, and I hope that you do, and we want to step into our being and our wisdom and that part of us and say, wait a minute, wait a minute. If people from all over the world are talking about the same experience of loved ones who've died already being back in the room with them as they are approaching their end of life, what is that saying? What is that saying? It's saying that we continue on. It just changes. Now, I am told that people come to help cross you over. And how beautiful is that? And how beautiful is that? So let's dive a little bit deeper into that. Many dying individuals report vividly seeing or speaking to loved ones who have already transitioned. These encounters are often a source of peace and comfort. They're a source of excitement. So I had one woman and she was a nurse. And I know that sometimes we can be very difficult patients. I'm just going to say it, call myself out. Not that I want to, I'm very polite and everything. I just don't like a lot of this and that and the other thing. But she didn't either. And so she was extremely angry that she was bedbound, that she was dependent on other people. And she would barely talk to me, like as the hospice nurse coming in. And she had five children. And she had discomfort, she had pain. And I would come in and she'd barely look at me. And sometimes she would just, nod. It was just awful. So again, a lot of my work was with her children, but I came in this one day and I went over to the bedside and I said, hi, how are you doing today? And she went, mm. And I said, are you having any pain? She went, mm. That was completely brand new. So something happened with this woman that night that she saw And she didn't share that with anyone, but I know that she saw it and she died that night. But she was in a completely different state of not only peace and comfort, but of excitement, which many of the patients that have this encounter are. If you can put yourself in a position where you see a loved one for the first time in 30 years, you see somebody who you may have thought in some part of your existence you wouldn't see again. Well, of course it's going to change everything. And what a beautiful thing that is. And so let's do some stats. According to research, up to 72% of individuals report these visitations. 72% report these visitations while awake, not just during dreams. Often these loved ones guide the dying individual to feel safe and reassured about their transition. Absolutely. So how do you support families at this moment? When families, again, they're usually frightened. When a loved one who's dying says, my mom's here, or sometimes families shut them down because they're afraid. Don't talk like that. Don't say that. They're so frightened usually in these end of life experiences right now, because we don't talk about it. It shows up and everything is just very scary and overwhelming. So you want to validate their experiences. And I'll tell you this, I've been in rooms with people who've said, do you see my mom over there? Do you see my grandma? And I don't. I haven't. Doesn't mean that they're not. But I'm also going to be honest with them. I don't see that. And wouldn't it be arrogant for me to assume that if I'm not seeing it, it's not existing? So let's talk a little bit about the science of physics for a minute. Everything is energetic frequency. Everything is vibrational. Everything. And your four bodies of energy, your physical, your mental, your emotional, and your spiritual. And at the end of life, because I've sat bedside with people and I've watched this literally happen, as their physical body's diminishing, their spiritual body is growing. And there's one point in this journey that they have one foot in this world, one foot in the next. So doesn't it make sense that they can see you and then they can see the beautiful people that are coming to cross them over? It's the most wonderful experience. And if anyone was feeling fear or worry, even if they don't believe what's happening when they see their loved one in such a different state, but I will tell you that I believe they are seeing exactly what they're seeing. So I don't want to people have said, well, they're on medication, they're on narcotic medication. I've had patients on no medicine. I've had patients with better oxygen saturations than I have say verbatim exactly what they're seeing. It's exactly what's happening. Validate their experiences. So I haven't seen what they see as far as like a figure, but I have seen and felt so many different things in the room that are absolutely beautiful. Don't dismiss their experiences as hallucinations or something else. That's not fair and it's unfounded. And I will tell you right now, I don't believe in any part of my being that that's what's happening. I know they're experiencing exactly what they're experiencing. Understand that these experiences are often a sign that end of life is coming near. So again, from that, if you want to just treat it from an energetic standpoint, as we're shedding the gift of the human body we've been given, they're getting closer to that place. So it makes sense that the more they can see, the closer they are to actually leaving the physical body. So let's talk about a few of my patients that have had this. So here we have this sweet man, and he had lung cancer. And so he said years before his end of life was in front of us, he said that his grandfather, his father, and his uncle were in the corner of his room, just standing in the corner of his room. This is years before. And they just stood there, no contact. But now he said, now that he was on hospice, he said, they're back again. And it comforted him. And he had his end of life, but it was interesting that they came to him. So when he was very ill, and maybe there was a part in the years prior when he was diagnosed that he was closer in that space. Maybe he did get a little bit better and they were there. He said there was no communication, but he said they're back now. And so it was a beautiful thing and he felt really good about it. So that's all we want for people, right? To feel loved and to feel safe in this transitional phase, and not just them, but their loved ones as well. That's all we can really show up and hope for each other. But from a bigger perspective, does this mean, and let me just put a question mark out there, does this mean that there's no death, that it's a transition, that we change, that we are, almost wearing the outfit of the day in this experience of Suzanne as a female and doing what I do, hopefully to expand and grow and contribute to the world. And then I go back to my purest form. And I'm going to say I absolutely believe that. So let's talk about this sweet little thing who talked about she was older. She got quite old as well. And one day, it was a Tuesday, and she said to her niece, who she was living with, because people were sharing the care, and that's really, again, something I advocate for, is that it shouldn't be done by one person. She said, Bob's coming on Saturday to take me to the dance. And the niece was like, okay. So there was a little bit of cognitive issues here. And Bob was her deceased husband. And the next day, she says to her niece, she goes, Bob's coming on Saturday to take me to the dance. I need something to wear. And so the niece said, okay. So the niece goes and gets a dress and says, do you like the dress? And she says, yes. And she hangs it on the door so where she could see it, which I thought was brilliant, lovely. The next day, she says, I need shoes. I need shoes to go with that dress. Bob's coming on Saturday. And she goes and gets a pair of shoes. She said, do you like these shoes? Yes, I do. Puts them down. And what do you think happened on Saturday? That she quietly died in her sleep. So this is a very common thing on so many different levels, that people will see their loved ones, that people will know that they're coming to cross them over, or having, like she says, the dance. Like I hear this too, that there's a room full of people, that it's a celebration. And what a magnificent thing that is. Now let's talk about this little one. Hard case, as you can imagine. And a lot of times children do not come on hospice services because they go to these wonderful hospitals that support and really cater to children that have terminal illnesses and support their families and siblings. But this little one was home, and he was on hospice, and I had volunteered to take this case because no other hospice worker wanted to touch it, because they knew it was a child. He was 5 years old. They knew that would be way too much, not be able to do that. At the time, I didn't have any patients because I had just come back from a volunteer hospice trip in Africa, and everyone else had high censuses. So I really felt that I should volunteer to take this case, even though it wasn't my territory. So I'd be driving a lot further. But you go with where your heart's guiding you. So what I wanted to do initially, which I want to do with all of my patients, is build trust with them, right? And so when I came in, this little one he had brain cancer, and so he had a brain tumor that was hitting his brain stem, and he was paralyzed already. And so when I came for that first visit, he was lying on the couch, head on a pillow, and he could only really do a light whisper. And at the end of the initial meeting, he was whispering something, or saying something to his mom, and his mom was just amazing. His parents were just amazing, and she's really able to communicate with him. And she put her ear down, and she was like, what? And he said, I want to show her my secret closet. And so he wanted to show me a secret closet that he had. Now, he wasn't able to do that because he started crying for the pain, and we ended that session. But at the end, when he did have his end of life, and that's a whole, and it did go as well as it could possibly go within the circumstances of this whole experience. Um, Nobody knew what he was talking about, a secret closet. And when I revisit that initial connection, and when I remember him saying it to his mother, I feel like there was an area in his bedroom that there possibly were people coming in and out to visit and to help cross him over. And he felt safe with me, or knew that on some level I understood that he wanted to show me that secret closet. So it happens in all different ways, all different ages, all different cultures, religions, and it's magnificent. It's magnificent. So then it begs to the question, do we ever die alone, even if no one else is in the room from the human side of things? I'm going to say absolutely not. We're never alone. So let's have a group discussion. Have you or someone you know encountered an experience where someone at the end of life has shared this, that somebody was in there? So we're specifically talking now. Has anyone had an experience where somebody that you've been caring for shared that there was somebody there with them that has already left this human experience? Let's see. We're going to go down. We have so many great questions here. I'm going to try and go and see if we have a couple. Um, okay. Yep. Okay, great. You guys have a lot on that one. Yeah. So has anyone's loved one shared with them? Um, a lot on the last one, which is super amazing. So let me kind of go back down. And again, you should all be able to see a lot of this. Okay, so Terry says, I worked with a friend who reported that she saw both of her parents. Beautiful. Rosanna says, yes, my dad was talking to his mom to help him. Eileen says, yes, my husband. Jessica says, yes. Karen says, my gran, June, and several patients. Yeah. Wow. Paula says, my brother-in-law had a car accident under an 18-wheeler. My father and his brother came to get him. Yeah. Amber says many, several times. Yes. Beautiful. Heather says, yes, my mom said her dad was standing there. Yeah. Um, beautiful. Nee says lots of people visited my grandma, her husband, her sister, her childhood caregiver. There are quite a few stories. One was this two sisters, if I may, were sharing this. They were hysterical about this. They said their dad had a really strong group of friends and that they always like went fishing and all of this stuff. And he said he was looking out the window of his bedroom. He said they were all there and he was talking to them and he was like saluting that. Like it was just, they said it was so funny because he was so in the reality that everyone was right there and acting as such that they were just having so much fun of the way that he was acting. And what a beautiful thing that is. Christy says, yes, last patient I worked with, her mother and husband who had already passed. You know, you guys, what would this do if everyone knew? Like, first of all, we are, a focus group here, so to speak. So we're here. There's 800 and something people on the line here. We're here in a group of people who have stepped forward to learn about and take this seminar, learn about end of life. Look how many are talking about this experience. So you can imagine that people out there, if we did a poll of how many people, even with that one end of life experience, would say, yeah, my mom was talking in another language to her grandmother or whatever it may be. And what would that say for this bigger picture of this thing that is the number one fear in the world? To me, it would say it absolutely should not be. It absolutely should not be. And it's these kind of communal stories and connectedness to all of this that is the medicine. This is the gift. Linda says, yes, said when she saw nurses, she knew she was back here. Otherwise, she was there. Ha! I love that. One foot in this world, one foot in the next. And that's why people get confused too, because they know they're in both worlds and they're tired a lot of the times. My mom, okay, Tracy says my mom's older sister that had passed on 4 years before her came to see her and hold her hand. I love this, so sweet. My uncle saw a man in the kitchen before he died, and separately, my mom was talking to someone in the corner of the room before she died. Yeah, really gorgeous, you guys. Thank you so much for sharing that. You light up this space. And again, it is time. It is time to remove the fear of death and get back on the page of how much we are connected in this sacred experience, not just of death, but of life as well. Really beautiful. And again, how does that make you feel to hear that it's so common? When I saw it, when I was seeing it as a hospice nurse, changed my entire life. Oh, there is a huge meaning to this journey going on that we're not talking about. And so it makes you feel connected to something greater. It makes you, to me, makes me feel at peace that I will see those that I love again, that I know that they're always omnipresent in that loving energy. I mean, it's a really, really powerful thing on so many levels. Let's talk about the common wisdom of the dying. Regardless of their beliefs or backgrounds, those nearing death often share remarkably similar insights about life and beyond. Here are 4 truths that are frequently spoken by the dying. So I put together the 4 truths. There is no death. So when they get to that place where they're able to have one foot in this world, one in the next, they realize there is no death. There is no death. It's a transition. That everything happened for a reason in their life. So when they're able to access that spiritual, higher perspective of loving wisdom, they're able to look back on their life and almost do a timeline and understand what those experiences were offering them for growth. And I know the most painful ones are usually the ones that give us the opportunity to grow the most, not denying how painful they are. But when you can look at what the opportunity that it provided you, and of course, maybe it's many, many years later, but when we can look at it for the gift that it taught us for expansion, that's a healing and a beautiful space to be in. So everything was meant for a reason. Life was happening for them, not to them. That there is no judgment. That we're all on our own path. That we don't have the right to judge others, and that we're not being judged. So if you can look at a situation and know that you didn't show up in the way that you wanted to, what did you learn from that? What are you going to do with that learning moving forward in your life? If you have somebody in your life who is not showing up or is causing harm to other people in emotional or whatever ways, they're on their journey. And what do you learn from that? And you also really have to understand that you're the only one that can protect your energy, and knowing who you're spending time with and how you're spending your time, in my opinion, is the most important question you'll ask yourself, because time is your most valuable commodity and you just don't know how much you have of it. So really realizing there's no judgment, not holding on to regret, but saying, what did it teach me? What can I take from that to move forward in a higher level of evolution and learning? Number 3, we're all connected to one unconditional loving energy. How beautiful is that? If we really embodied that, if we brought that in and knew in its truth that we're all connected, would we be bombing each other? Would we be unkind the way that so many times we see? No, of course not. So these are, again, many, many things that people will say. Profound lessons offer comfort, healing, and perspective, not just for the dying, but for the living as well. And now the things that end-of-life patients will say and experience. One of the things that struck me right away, and again, working with different cultures and religions, is the phrase that they say, I'm going home. I'm going home, like excited. And again, families don't know this. They say, Mom, you are home. You're home. That's not the home they're talking about. They're talking about a spiritual home. It happens all the time. And it is so beautiful. And there's such a serenity when they say it. So they know they're going home to that one connected spiritual energy that we are ultimately all connected to. And that awareness is just beautiful. Happened to me with people all over, really all over. And I wanted to tell you something else, but let's talk about Maureen. So there are quite a few stories about what people have shared as they get a glimpse of where they're headed. And if anything will change your life, it's seeing somebody who sees where they're going. And I think for any of you who are in this space working an end of life, when you're able to be part of that experience and part of getting a glimpse of what's across that veil, it changes you forever. So Maureen was a woman who came into the oncology unit. She was 46 years old, and she had gallbladder cancer that she was being cared for with chemotherapy. And it had brittled her bones, the chemo, so bad that she broke her hip. She came into the oncology unit. I was working Friday, Saturday, Sunday. She came in on a Friday. They were all, her and her sister were petrified. I get it. Wanted to build the trust with them right away. And then on Saturday's shift, by the end of the shift, I had moved her from a bedside commode, a turn and pivot right to her bedside. So a commode is a bedside toilet. So she, again, had a fractured hip. As the nurse, I'm helping her to the toilet. I put her back on the bed. It's literally like boop, boop. She's right there. And she was out of breath. And that was a new finding. And, I always I put my hand on her shoulder. I said, just slow down. I said, do you want nasal cannula oxygen? She said, no. Shook her head, no. And we both knew in that moment, we were both silent, but we knew something really serious was happening somewhere in our being. So they told me that they had done tests that night, found out that she had blown a pulmonary emboli, which is a blood clot to her lung. Not a good thing at all. And so the next day on Sunday, the hospital usually works on a fragmented schedule on Sundays, and the doctors kind of come in when they can for their Sunday. And then, and I was on the phone with the doctor, multiple times getting orders during the day. The doctor comes in at about 3 o'clock and she's like, what is going on? What is going on? And I was like, she has a pulmonary emboli. This had been her patient she's been treating for months and months. And we go in, and I had a habit of wanting to go into visits with the doctor so I could hear exactly what they're saying. So that, if the patient had any questions or whatnot, I would know exactly what was said there. And so we both went down to Maureen's room, walked through the hospital doorway, and Maureen looks at the doctor and says, I just want to thank you for everything you've done for me. And I turned to look at the doctor, and the doctor has tears going down her face. And so in that moment, Maureen was telling us that she was going to die before any of us called it. And so we go out to the nurse's station, and the doctor is flipping. She is like, we have to do something. We have to do something. There has to be something we can do. And honestly, when you have chemotherapy, all of your blood levels are low. Your platelet count is low, which is your clotting factor. The only thing for a blood clot I could even think of is like a IV bag of blood thinners, which would have allowed her to bleed out because there's no clotting factors. There's nothing that could have been done. And so this is what I want you to know of this, is that night, the nurse said that Maureen woke up from a sleep at about 11 o'clock and said, get my sister. I'm transitioning, with all the excitement that you would see from an 8-year-old child. You just said, you're going to Disney World. They said they got the sister out of the lounge. She comes in, Maureen goes, I'm transitioning, like excited. So I ask you this, what did she see? What did she know now? And what did she see when she was sleeping that not only removed her fear, but had her excited about the next chapter? There's a much bigger picture going on here. And it allows us to then look at this thing called life through a different lens. And it's really time that we all do that. It's really the moment. This is the moment. And interestingly enough, end of life is actually teaching us how to do that. So when end of life comes about, it's a sacred experience, and we want to help you with tools to help facilitate and create that sacred space. So how can you help families and loved ones, and even yourself at the time? For family members and caregivers, your presence, your true presence, plays a key role in facilitating a sacred transition. And here's how you can support your loved one during this time. Setting a sacred space. So there's lots of beautiful tools. Think in terms of, if you've ever walked into like a spa or a meditation place or a wellness where, there's like background music, and there might be a little aromatherapy and some soft lighting and just like a really high vibrational feeling. That's what you want to think about, that is setting that space. So you can use, again, soft background music. You can use battery operated candles. The space around that person in their transition, that place should be kept sacred. It shouldn't be a time where people are just congregating and talking amongst themselves. That place should be, that direct space should be kept sacred, quiet, respected. Offer silent support. Just hold that space, again, with your heart expanded to be of the highest service. Just creating the energy and tapping into what's there. It creates calm, loving energy, not only for you and the person, but for other people in that environment as well. You always want to let your loved ones share. We're not here to fix end of life. It can't be fixed. It's not to be fixed. It is to be supported. It is to be supported. Let people talk. It's a journey. You go through, you get a terminal diagnosis. Usually there's a shock phase, and usually there's lots of things that go on, and you can be in denial and angry and all of it. And so you want help to help people just meet them where they are emotionally in their journey, and don't have judgment, and allow them to share what's on their mind. Allow them to ask questions. We don't know all the answers to things, but allow people to ask questions. And if you don't know something, see if you can find out. One of the things that I love about the work that I'm privileged and honored to do, and I think it's just even without saying, and many of you in this space who do the work can probably agree with me, is that when you do this work, when you're working in end of life and you come into an end of life scenario and you're not panicked and you're not in that crisis energy, people just start to calm down a little bit, because you do this all the time. And if you're not flipping out, then maybe we shouldn't. It's almost like this unspoken energy. And then, people will ask, they'll ask, you do this work, what do you think? And if you're asked things, of course, you can share with them. And again, always be honest. Grant permission, reassure them that it's okay to go when they're in that deep sleep coma. The love and the legacy that they have left you is always present. It's one thought away. Love cannot be destroyed, it can be amplified. So remembering that, and remember that always, that if you are missing someone, bring in those memories of them, bring in that love of them. It's one thought away. And stay grounded as much as you can while you're in this position. Practice self-care as best you can, because many people just start to forget about their own needs and start to go down right with that end-of-life patient. Remaining calm and compassionate can shift the emotional energy for everyone in the room as well. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing. And please remember that death is not the end, but a profound transition. Bringing back the sacredness of death brings back the sacredness of life. And together, this is how we change the world. I want to thank you for being here. You are the change. Those of you showing up, those of you being called to this space, those of you who are ready to say, I want to understand and choose love over this fear that we've been unfortunately running around with. There you have it. The Good Death Seminar Series podcast. This was seminar series number 9. And again, did you find that absolutely life-changing? Hearing the common stories that people share, what they see, the phenomenon at the end of life. How is that possible? Well, maybe there is just something so much greater going on in this journey than most of us know. And that something is so healing and inspiring. So if you have any questions on that, please let me know. Leave a comment below. I'll be sure to answer as many as I possibly can. And if you have not signed up already, join us. The Good Death community is in full global swing. And again, when we bring back the sacredness of death, we're bringing back the sacredness of life. The Good Death Book Club is a community based on that premise. So join us. It's starting on May 15th. 1 p.m. Eastern time. Space is limited. You don't want to miss it. We are going to go through each chapter of the Good Death book once a month. They're going to be absolutely amazing. You can join with the link below. Thank you, everyone, for being in this episode, and we'll see you in the next one.